The release of the 17 dirty emails is not just another data dump. It is the first time we are hearing the private, unfiltered voices of the men who thought they were immune to scrutiny. Unlike the flight logs, which only prove proximity, these 17 specific exchanges capture the intent, the panic, and the transactional nature of Jeffrey Epstein's relationships with the global elite. The most explosive of these is undoubtedly the 2011 correspondence between Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell regarding Donald Trump, where Epstein refers to the former president as the dog that hasn't barked. This cryptic phrase, analyzed by intelligence experts, suggests a mutual containment strategized silence borne by shared knowledge. When you pair this with the newly released 2019 email to journalist Michael Wolff, where Epstein bluntly states that Trump knew about the girls and had even asked Maxwell to stop her activities at Mar-a-Lago, the narrative shifts from mere association to active awareness. This contradicts years of denials and suggests that the break between the two men was not moral, but likely a strategic move to minimize liability. The second pillar of this dirty email, Cash, exposes the desperate scrambling of Prince Andrew, referred to in the documents simply as the Duke. The emails dismantle his BBC interview defense entirely. We now have the text of Epstein explicitly offering to set Andrew up with a 26-year-old Russian woman who he describes as clever, beautiful, and trustworthy, to which the Duke replies, "I would be delighted." This transaction is devoid of any pretense of social friendship. It is a procurement service. Even more damning are the panic-stricken emails from Andrew to Maxwell as the scandal began to break, where he pleads, "I don't know anything about this. You must say so, please." This is not the language of an innocent man confused by allegations. It is the language of a co-conspirator realized the firewall is burning down. The 17 emails prove that Andrew was not a bumbling guest, but an active participant who relied on Epstein and Maxwell to manage his public image and private view. Perhaps the most culturally revealing aspect of this batch is the correspondence with former Treasury Secretary and Harvard President Larry Summers. These emails don't just show corruption, they show a complete moral vacuum at the top of American academia. In exchanges from 2017, Summers treats Epstein not as a pariah, but as a peer, casually gossiping about the Trump administration and asking, "How guilty is Donald?" But the dirty nature of the emails comes from Summers' dismissal of the #MeToo movement, where he complains to a known sex offender that men are being persecuted for hitting on a few women 10 years ago. This reveals that for the intellectual elite, Epstein's crimes were seen as a minor inconvenience, a process crime rather than a moral horror. Summers continued to seek Epstein's validation and funding long after his conviction, proving that in these circles, money and intellect wiped away all sins. These 17 emails also hint at a broader containment operation involving the tech sector, with cryptic "see you in 3 weeks" messages to figures like Peter Thiel suggesting that Epstein's calendar was far more active post-conviction than we were led to believe. The casual nature of these check-ins implies that Epstein was still operating as a high-level power broker, likely trading information or compromise right up until his final arrest. The 17 dirty emails are essentially a blueprint of the protection racket that kept him safe. He had dirt on the politicians, leverage over the royals, and financial entanglements with the academics. We have now analyzed the Trump, Andrew, and Summers connections, but there is a fourth hidden recipient in this batch whose identity is partially redacted but links directly to the science funding scandal. The 2026 release of the 17 dirty emails has finally cracked the seal on one of the most guarded secrets of the Epstein operation: the systematic infiltration of the American scientific establishment. For years we were led to believe that Epstein's interest in science was merely a hobby of a wealthy man seeking intellectual prestige. But the 17th and most redacted email in this batch suggests something far more sinister. This correspondence, dated March 2014, involves a high-ranking official at the MIT Media Lab and uses the codename Voldemort to refer to Epstein. This wasn't just a playful nickname. It was a formal protocol designed to bypass the university's donor disqualification list. The email confirms that while the world was told Epstein was a pariah, he was actually functioning as a shadow director, moving millions of dollars from other billionaires like Bill Gates and Leon Black into specific research projects that matched his own disturbing interests in genetic engineering and transhumanism. The dirty nature of these exchanges lies in the blatant disregard for ethical boundaries and the active participation of world-renowned academics in hiding a predator's footprint. In one of the emails, a prominent researcher is seen thanking Epstein for a 3D printed marble gift delivered to his Manhattan apartment, a gesture that symbolizes the intimate, almost domestic, nature of these high-level bribes. The correspondence reveals that Epstein wasn't just funding research, he was auditioning scientists to help him realize a superhuman agenda. He hosted science dinners where he would grill Nobel laureates on the possibility of seeding the human race with his own DNA, a plan he referred to in these emails as his genetic legacy. The 2026 dump proves that the scientific elite didn't just take his money, they gave him a platform to workshop ideas that belong in a dystopian novel, all while knowing exactly who he was. What makes these 17 emails particularly damaging in 2026? is the exposure of the science spy network. One specific thread from late 2017 shows Epstein discussing capturing certain academic departments to ensure they remained loyal to his funding stream, even if he were to face legal trouble again. The emails highlight a disturbing level of misogyny within these circles, with high-profile figures like Larry Summers complaining to Epstein about the annoyance of sexual harassment allegations in academia. This created a culture of silence where young female researchers felt they couldn't speak out because Epstein's money was literally the lifeblood of their departments. The emails show a pay-to-play system where scientific truths was secondary to keeping the Voldemort money flowing through anonymous offshore accounts and redacted donor logs. As we move deeper into the 2026 archive, we find that the 17 dirty emails were just the tip of a much larger iceberg involving the genetic engineering project he was funding in New Mexico. The redacted recipients in these emails are now being linked to a clandestine laboratory where Epstein reportedly sought to optimize human traits, a project that involves names currently sitting in the highest offices of the American tech industry. The emails hint at a 2018 meeting that was scrubbed from official calendars, where the future of private biological data was discussed as a new form of currency, a darker version of the blackmail he had already mastered. This wasn't just about science. It was about the ultimate form of control. The digital breadcrumbs in the 17 dirty emails lead directly to the high desert of New Mexico, where the 2026 unsealing of architectural blueprints and contractor correspondence has finally exposed the true purpose of Zorro Ranch. For decades, the 10,000-acre estate was shrouded in mystery, but the recent February 2026 Truth Commission hearings in the New Mexico House of Representatives have revealed that the ranch was the primary site for Epstein's genetic legacy project. The emails include a series of panicked 2018 messages between Epstein and a specialized construction firm discussing the climate control stability for an underground vault. While the public was told this was a wine cellar or a safe room, the 2026 forensic audit of the site suggests these were actually high-tech cryogenic and DNA storage facilities designed to house the biological data Epstein was obsessed with collecting from his powerful guests. The blueprints attached to these emails show a massive 26,000 square foot mansion that was only the surface of a much larger subterranean infrastructure. Survivors testifying before the New Mexico Commission in early 2026 have described hidden hallways and soundproofed rooms that were not listed on the official county records. The dirty nature of these emails comes from the evidence of local corruption. Correspondence shows Epstein donating heavily to the families of state officials to ensure that building inspectors never set foot in the lower levels of the ranch. This allowed for the construction of a surveillance-heavy guest wing that was essentially a high-tech trap, mirroring the temple on his private island but on a much more industrial scale. The emails suggest that Zorro Ranch was intended to be the permanent headquarters for his blackmail operation, far away from the prying eyes of the New York or Florida press. Most disturbing are the 2026 revelations regarding the optimization experiments mentioned in the email chains. One specific exchange from late 2018 involves Epstein and an unnamed biotech executive discussing the harvesting of traits from the children of elite donors. This moves the conspiracy from simple trafficking into the realm of illicit human experimentation and eugenics. The emails indicate that the ranch's private airstrip was used to bypass traditional customs, flying in equipment and test subjects under the cover of darkness. As of February 2026, the FBI has reportedly reopened the physical investigation into the Zorro Ranch grounds, using ground-penetrating radar to locate the specific biological vaults referenced in the 17 dirty emails. The paper trail is no longer just about who Epstein knew. It is about what he was trying to build, a future where the elite could literally own the genetic blueprints of the next generation. The investigation has now turned toward the shadow financiers who funded the Zorro Ranch expansion. The emails revealed that while Epstein was a registered sex offender, he was still receiving consulting fees from offshore accounts linked to some of the biggest names in the American tech industry, specifically for his work on human enhancement. This financial support allowed him to maintain a private security force at the ranch that was more advanced than most small-town police departments. We have now mapped out the political, scientific, and physical infrastructure of this operation, but the final, most dangerous piece of the puzzle involves the 2026 exit strategy emails, the messages sent in the final days before his arrest that suggest he wasn't planning on going to jail, but on disappearing entirely. The final weeks of July 2019, as revealed by the 17 dirty emails, show a chilling shift from calculated arrogance to absolute desperation. One specific thread from July 4th captures Epstein inquiring about the transferability of biological assets and encrypted data to jurisdictions without extradition treaties. This wasn't the behavior of a man contemplating his end. It was a man planning a permanent departure from the American legal system. The 2026 unsealing of his private server logs has confirmed that he was in the process of moving terabytes of special projects, data the very compromat he used for leverage to encrypted cloud servers hosted in nations beyond the reach of the FBI. The dirty secret buried in these final exchanges is that several recipients were high-level government figures who, instead of reporting a flight risk, appeared to be coaching him on how to secure his digital insurance policies before the cell door closed. This leads us to the most haunting legacy of the 2026 file dump, the dead man's switch. For years, this was dismissed as an internet rumor, but the 16th email in this cache is a formal directive to a private security firm in Switzerland, authorizing the scheduled release of archives in the event of a prolonged lack of communication. We are now living through the results of that directive. The slow, calculated drip of these 17 emails and the subsequent millions of pages isn't just a byproduct of the legal system. It is a pre-programmed exposure designed to take down the very people who failed to protect him, or more likely, the people who eventually silenced him. The emails suggest that Epstein knew his intelligence immunity was expiring, and he turned his archive into a weapon that would continue to fire long after his heart stopped beating. The picture is finally clear. This was never just about one man's depravity. It was a global infrastructure of blackmail, eugenics, and financial corruption that used American institutions as its playground. The names found in these emails, from Treasury secretaries and former presidents to the giants of Silicon Valley, are merely characters in a much larger play of influence. As of February 2026, the investigation has shifted from the crimes of the past to the corruption of the present. With over 2,000 hidden videos still referenced in these emails and the 2026 congressional hearings set to begin, the firewall of the elite is finally crumbling. They thought that by erasing the man, they could erase the evidence, but the digital ghost he left behind in these 17 exchanges is now haunting the halls of power more than he ever could in life. We have followed the money, decoded the science, and unmasked the politicians, but the most important discovery is that the public is no longer willing to look away. This is the first chapter of a new era of accountability in America. Jeffrey Epstein is gone, but his network remains. And as we analyze the next million pages of the 2026 release and prepare for the upcoming congressional testimonies, we will continue to pull back the curtain. This is Investigative Journalist. We have the emails, we have the blueprints, and we are just getting started. If you believe the truth belongs to the public and not just the powerful, subscribe and stay vigilant. The story is no longer about his death. It's about the secrets that survived him.